Recently, we learned that prior to the creation of the dragon aspects, the Titan Keeper tier experimented with 4 proto-dragons, infusing them with 4 elements, which is the exact same number and the exact same elements as the Primal Incarnates use. Now, the 5th missing incarnate could have been Galakrond, who was probably a failed experiment that required tier to just completely discard the initial prototype batch and start anew and create the dragon aspects that we know of. Naturally, the Primal Incarnates were jealous and felt violated since these experiments don't seem to have been done willingly, so they decided to eradicate all Titan presence from Azeroth, which led to the massive war and the current storyline. So what is all the new information that we have, and could this entire origin story be true? Right now, GameEvo has some amazing sales, which you can check out with my link in the description. You can get The Witcher, anything Warcraft related, gift cards, and a bunch of games at really amazing prices. Best of all, if you use my code DORON, you can add an additional discount as well. So make sure to click my link in the description and check out GameEvo and get some really great deals. As far as we were told, the Primal Incarnates are the original proto-dragons in their natural state, which, as far as we know, is elemental, and what they are fighting for is the return to this natural state, and they are fighting against the Titan-enforced order on Azeroth. At the same time, we kinda know they're evil because at least one of them collaborated with some really dark powers, but overall, as this is brand new lore, this entire period seems completely unclear. However, some of the recent stuff, essentially the finale of the 10.0 patch, revealed some really crazy information. You can probably already heard about this, so I'm not going to bore you with the exact details, and I have previous videos where I cover this in more detail, but long story short, we go into Tyrhold, the main Titan facility on the Dragon Isles, and we run into the actual halls and the actual laboratories of the Titan Keeper tier, where, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, we discover 2 rooms. One where he is giving commentary on his experiments on the 4 proto-dragons, and the next room is in regards to the actual aspects that all of us are familiar with. Now, while there isn't any concrete proof of their origin of the Primal Incarnates, I think there is a lot of things in the details here to look at. Most importantly, the way the rooms are actually set out when you examine it. First, we go into the Primal room, then we go into the Aspect room, which obviously implies that that is how the experiments went in this exact order. Second, in the Primal room, there are 4 dragons that Tyr is talking about, and he's infusing them with the exact same elements that the Primal Incarnates are using, and there are also 4 of the Primal Incarnates that coincidentally use those exact same elements. We don't really know the details, but this hologram of Tyr seems to be using these native elemental dragons, and he seems to be infusing them with various elements, some that are even against their nature, and he's inverting their actual abilities, and at the same time, he's shocked at just how resistant and powerful these dragons are, and just how crazy moldable they can be as well. To me, this signifies that as the Titans had conquered Azeroth, they looked for a way to increase their army and influence on the planet, so Tyr probably experimented on the various native species, but he was particularly blown away by the dragons, as in he saw a lot of potential with them. It also explains why some Titan Keepers like Odin absolutely hated him, they wanted nothing to do with him, and not all of the Keepers were actually on board, but through these experiments, Tyr probably convinced and bought into the entire let's just turn these proto-dragons into our servants, they may be the best race on Azeroth. Now, we don't exactly know whether these dragons volunteered, whether he baited them into these experiments, abducted them, promised them powers, so really whether this entire experiment was according to free will, but this seems to be a significant experiment, and through the documents we learned about the Titans, it wouldn't at all be surprising that this would not have actually been done by signing a waiver. Even in the experiment, he notes that some of the dragons attempted to escape from their pods, which I honestly doubt it would happen if they actually wanted the powers themselves. So, for example, we have Tyr talking about how when he infuses a dragon with the ability of air, he can cast gusts of wind, and he observes that the process is magical as opposed to mechanical. As you may know, we have Razaget, the Storm Eater, using both wind and lightning, which really is related to the element of air. Then, we have Tyr discussing fire, where he infuses a proto-dragon with this element, and it causes him to hurl globes of fire hot enough to melt metal, and apparently those infused with fire are the most unstable of the bunch. Well, we have Firac, the Blazing, the incarnate of fire, that we're going to learn about in the very near future. Next on the line, we have possibly the most interesting one, and that is when Tyr infuses a proto-dragon with the element of earth. He discovers that the scale density increases and flexibility reduces, and that this one tried to break the containment sphere 3 times, which also indicates that this was not exactly done willingly. Now, of course, we have Iridicron, the stone scaled, the actual incarnate of earth. Keep in mind the name Stone Scaled, and Tyr talks about scale density specifically out of all the features. Honestly, I doubt this would be a coincidence. Lastly, we have the most important one, and that is the creation of Whirlnaut, the Frozen Heart. Tyr apparently inverted this dragon completely because naturally Whirlnaut was a fire dragon, and he removed his fire breathing capabilities and infused him with water, which in turn gave him the abilities of ice. Now, there isn't anything super interesting with this primal incarnate, but with this one he gives the most interesting line, and that is that Tyr ponders whether there is an element or an energy that the proto-dragons cannot absorb. And I'm guessing yes, there is. Now, in regards to this, I have a video, but it is heavily implied that Tyr was behind the creation of Galakrond, and that Galakrond was the 5th dragon, possibly infused by the spirit element that fell under the influence of Yogg-Saron as the old god attempted to undermine the Titan efforts. It makes a lot of sense, not just as a speculation, but because Tyr always said that he was at fault for the creation of Galakrond, which is obviously really telling, but he never actually explained to us why he's the one to blame. Now, the thing is, everything here is incredibly murky. We don't know whether Galakrond predated them, whether this happened before or after, and that will probably be revealed soon. However, my theory is that Galakrond was a part of this original batch. It would make total sense because at the moment we have 5 aspects and only 4 incarnates. Galakrond would have been the 5th incarnate, which would make the 2 match. Now, the current lore tells us the incarnates became a thing after the aspects became a thing, but I think those are just details. The incarnates existed, it's just that they became the incarnates, the enemy, as a counterweight to the aspects when the aspects became a thing. My theory is that Tyr's ultimate goal was to infuse them with Arcane, as that is literally what the Titans do. That is their energy. However, first he wanted to experiment and learn about them in order to know how to do it properly, so he started experimenting with elemental magic, which is of course natural to them, but the ultimate goal was always to turn them into the Titan dragons. It is possible that Galakrond was supposed to be infused by Spirit, or the Decay magic, and then when he was supposed to transition into Arcane, Yogg-Saron had corrupted the waters and turned him into what he was. We know from the recent book that Yogg-Saron used the water source for the corruption, and we also know Tyr used the water source, the same water source, to infuse it with Arcane. Tyr probably realized that elemental magic is not exactly compatible with Arcane, but it is done in the same manner, and now he wanted to continue to use this experiment, but he needed a new batch so that another Galakrond doesn't happen, so that it doesn't get out of hand. He, of course, couldn't use the elemental stuff and the Arcane, he needed just the Arcane, so he decided to just discard the original aspects and to find new dragons, convince them, and enhance them into the dragon aspects. Something probably happened around this time that we don't know about, but naturally the incarnates would not just be jealous, but also feel violated as they were subjected to these terrible experiments only to be discarded, and in my opinion, that is what created a ton of resentment against the Titan Order, and they decided to make it their life mission to completely eradicate all Titan presence from Azeroth, and now needed to empower themselves with a new power in order to win, which is probably the old gods, and they most likely did it through Iridikron. This also makes sense as to why we have certain parallels between the incarnates and the aspects. For example, we have Raszageth and her connection to Alexstrasza and their constant conversations, and most importantly, we have Iridikron and Eltharion that seems to be like the exact same thing, just on the other side of the coin, but they're very similar. So, in my opinion, it is very likely that Tyr was responsible for the creation of these dragons in order to create the aspects. They were like a prototype, but he probably didn't intend to create the primal incarnates as in the incarnates. The primal incarnates thing probably came after the aspects were a thing, so more than likely they started calling themselves that in order to gain authority, to split the dragons into factions, which ultimately led into that massive war that Alexstrasza has been talking about constantly. Of course, at the moment, a lot of this is just speculation, as it is based on data that is subject to change, but to me, at least a significant portion of this entire theory makes a lot of sense, and I could totally see it coming to fruition. I could also see this lore leading into the entire connection with the old gods, which is going to be a brand new storyline that could prove to be incredibly interesting. Thank you for watching. Check out how everything we know about Deathwing is wrong by clicking on the screen, and check out the Notes Academy for videos on real world history. See you next time.